Hello friends, welcome to my new YouTube channel that I decided to start called Fifth Perspective. Um, I feel like it is time for me to share things that I've experienced from the other side with spirits as a platform to help people. Um, Me growing up, everything started for me in first grade. I had no help at all. And going through something like that is can be very scary, especially when you're all by yourself. So a lot of things I had to figure out on my own. And sometimes with repetition of something happening a certain way, you start to catch on that, this means this. So I wanted to just start a platform that is a safe space for everyone to, whether people experience this and want some guidance. I encourage people to share their stories down the road. I would love to hold interviews with other people experiencing similar things. I think we are going through a huge shift, more than ever, where more and more people are starting to experience other things that they cannot explain. This reality is a very physical reality. You're taught to basically go by everything that you're seeing and what the brain is comprehending when things happen on the other side, when an angel reaches me, or a random spirit from a past loved one, or I can get anything and everything. I've experienced everything from the worst to amazing, and when these things happen, you're not in your head. That is the last place you're in. You get more in, I guess for me, it's more of I'm more in here in my center. And it's amazing how much this can take on. It's like within a second, you can have a paragraph of something from a character just shoved into your chest, and you know the whole story as if you're that person. You can get information without having to talk. And it's always the brain that I realize is almost 2D in the sense of how slow it is in processing, and it almost wants to be the thing that's like, wait, wants to be almost logical, right? Explaining it all out. So when things happen with spirits through, like if I cross paths with a random person and a past loved one comes through for them, I see them come in. It's different. You see different. You don't necessarily see through your eyes either. A lot of things that you see can be inner projections. I can't explain it. It's like, yeah, you literally are seeing it right in front of you, but instead of seeing it outside of yourself, where you're looking in the room, that figure is there, but on like an inner projection, so you can see everything. Anyway, so there's a lot of stuff to dive into. Every episode I share will be either a story. I would like to do card readings eventually. I do that with coffee readings. People who know me, I do it a lot for people in the LA area, where if someone drinks the coffee, you spin the grind, the Turkish coffee, you flip it over, it dries. I can look in and literally see images, and I never used to be able to see this until 16. My grandma always used to see this, my Bubba on the Serbian side. So this is like something that's followed through in our line. And one day out of nowhere when I was 16 years old, I could start seeing these images, and things just really get really clear, or sometimes look like a drawing of something and it pops out at you. And I'll get emotions with that too, so I can pick up on what that is. So I think as I go along with things, I definitely would love to offer one-on-one readings for people, where I do the cards and the coffee. I can do that through my own cup. I can make wishes in there for each person specifically and see things detailed. Yeah, I think all in all, I'm just going to have this channel really kind of show all sides of me, even including health stuff that rocked everything, like flipped everything upside down for years. I know a lot of people struggle with things and can't figure things out. You know, I don't think we're taught to listen to our body very well. And strangely, with being very in tune with the whole spirit side, it's left me more sensitive with things. So I am very in tune with my body as well. So hopefully in sharing things I learned along the way as well could help people. The medical world is way off. All these specialists separate. No one's working together. And if you exhaust one specialist, it's not like they have another one to send you to. Doctors don't really ever go over food and diet and how that's a huge thing that can really make you sick. And it definitely did for me for 12 years. I was bedridden for 85% of the time for those 12 years on all these meds that they put me on. During that time, because I was resonating lower, the things you don't want to reach you were reaching me. So that's when I was experiencing a lot of things with demons and the devil, unfortunately, and it was not fun. Like, I literally felt like that was probably the most I've unraveled in myself, where I thought I was like some chess piece on a game and they just had it out for my soul. But it took me a lot. Like, I've gone through so much death and rebirths in myself and growth through so many things that I've struggled in. So, I'm 38, and everything that I have experienced, sometimes it just felt like 5 lifetimes of pain shoved in one. And I realized along the way, in order to help people and be a healer of some sort, you do have to go through the worst of it. So I do hope that this can just help people not feel so alone, have a place to share whatever deeper things they want, or things from the other world, or things with health based off whatever, video I'm sharing. So this will be really interesting. So to start, I grew up like a normal kid up until first grade. So that is when like everything changed. I went to see my grandpa, my Dida is grandpa in Serbian. And he was in the hospital. I didn't know, obviously, at the time that he was had leukemia, or that he was even dying from leukemia. That wasn't shared with me at that time, being that young. We went to visit him, and I remember seeing him in his room and all these wires and tubes attached to him, and that was probably the first time I really felt like my heart really hurt, just seeing the pain he was in. So we went downstairs to the lobby. They were going to unhook him so he could come down. I remember him coming down like through the elevator with like the IV bag. And he came down and sat next to me on my left, and then my mom was next to him on the other side. And I was listening to him talk about, I don't know, just things in general. And I remember seeing my brother and sister playing in front of me. They were running around, and me being a little kid, I wanted to get up and play. And right when I was about to get up to join them and play, I felt and saw an angel come down to my right side. And I just felt such this peace and calm. And when I really thought about it, because I remember feeling like they put their arm around me, but I felt more of my side covered, so it almost felt like it was like the arm and wing, just like everything kind of, sorry, that's my phone. So yeah, that I felt that around me on the left side. And the angel, I heard it. Again, you don't like hear through your ears. So when I hear, it's within, inside. Mostly it'll be in my chest, and then it's my brain that processes. So I heard from the angel, don't go, stay. This is the last time you're going to see him. And I knew what that meant. And weirdly, being younger, I remember not being afraid of death, and I wasn't as sad about it. There was this knowing I had that he would still be there, just in another form, and that, we all end up this way at some point. Funny enough, like getting older, death became harder for me. And I almost wonder if it's because time just keeps going with you longer and longer and longer away from the other side. And so there's just like longer, bigger absence. So then the pain is more. Because at the time as a kid, I'm sure everybody remembers, your concept of time is just different. The older you get, it really changes. So I stayed, and I didn't tell anybody. I just remember thinking that there was no point to tell anyone. No one would really understand me being this little girl in first grade. I don't know. I guess I just didn't really think I would be, anyone would believe me, or maybe I would sound weird. So, I don't know. Whatever I felt, it was just well, they won't understand like I do. They would get worried and all this stuff, and I was very calm. So, and it was interesting because one of the things I remember my grandpa saying when I was sitting next to him, he's like, I really feel like Alicia is going to be the one who brings me flowers all the time to my grave. And I remembered that. That circles back later in my life. But basically, from that moment on, I always brought flowers to his grave because I remembered what he said, and I wanted to honor that. And there was this medium I spoke with one time, and it's funny because I experience these things, but I have a hard time believing other people, but I believed her. She really got it spot on. She didn't know anything about anything in my family, and she was talking to me and was like, oh, your grandpa's here, and he is Okay, wait, before she says this, before I meet her for a sit down, I saw this photo of him in black and white, and behind it was this writing, and he signs it like my little Yenya, and I was like, Bubba, what does this mean? What does this mean? And she said lamb. Like, it was like a little lamb was like in Serbian a term of endearment. And I guess that was his photo that he gave to my Bubba when the marriage was arranged. I have arranged marriages on both grandparents' side. So in former Yugoslavia, she lived in a village and he lived not the next village over, but the one after, and the families knew each other. And he requested to marry one of the daughters. She was the oldest, so she said that she wanted to take it. Anyway, so that was the photo that he gave to her that she held on for a year before meeting up with him, because at that time World War II happened and she was trying to escape former Yugoslavia. I can get into that later, but eventually she got out safe, and after being held in Italian concentration camps for 2 months, because there was just so many people coming through with no papers, no birth certificates, everything was burned and lost. They finally let her through, and then that's when she met my dad. So on the back of this thing, it says little Kenya. Okay, so I meet with this woman, and she says to me, out of nowhere, she's like, your grandpa is here. He's right next to you. And he's holding flowers, and he's like shaking them to me, implying there's like a great importance around these flowers, and he wants you to know that he recognizes what you've been doing. And she's like, what does this mean? I go, oh my God. This is from when I was in first grade. I heard him talk about flowers and how he always thought I'd be the one to bring them to his grave. And I have, and I do. And she's like, oh, okay. She goes, yeah, like he recognizes you've been doing this. And then she says to me, he keeps saying, like, calling you this thing. He's like, but I don't know what he's saying. She's like, it's almost like another language. She's like, oh, he's laughing at me because I can't understand it. And she's like, he's saying something like little yenya. And I just right there, like, I was like jaw dropped, and I was like, oh my God, now I really know, like, she's legit. And I start laughing, and I'm like, that is so funny because I just read it on the back of this photo and like learned it was a term of endearment. So anyway, so back at the hospital with my dida, yeah, he said that. And I remembered, and God, I remember the robe he was wearing. It was like this light blue robe, and he had slippers on, and he was one of my favorite people in the world. So he was the first person I experienced passing over. And yeah, I remember leaving knowing that I would not see him again in that form. And I remember just like going back to my usual life, going to school, and then one day my dad showed up, and during recess, and I was like, why is he here? And I run to him, and the closer I got, it hit me. I was like, oh, I know what he's going to say. And he told me, like, let's go. Told us in the car that he passed away. And when I got to the house, well, I remember when I heard, I was like, well, I know. I don't know why I expected other people to just know, like, tune in on their own too, but maybe because it was the first time it happened to me, so I just figured, well, if I picked up on it, maybe other people will eventually pick up on it on their own, and that did not happen. Yeah, and then I went to the house, my grandma's house, and everyone was just mourning and so sad. And I remember just thinking, like, why is everyone so sad and crying? Like, he's not gone forever. Sorry, I'm in LA and there are helicopters and it's very real. Anyway, um, yeah. So it was interesting because I think I was like questioning, like, why wasn't I crying? You know? When I finally did start crying at my grandma's house, it was because I was hurting for everyone else with the grief and sadness that I saw them go through. Um, I don't even know if I ever told my mom that when I was a kid. I know eventually I told her, but you know, where she really started believing me on things was around high school because she started experiencing things that I would tell her were happening in the house and stuff. Um, so that was my first thing. And think now, being 38 and looking back, I think it was a gift that my grandpa, my dada, left me with because be, because he knew my life was going to be very challenging and difficult. And my God, it was. And without these things from the other side, I honestly don't think I would be sitting, I really would not be sitting in this chair talking to anybody right now. Um, I went through really, really, really dark, heavy things. You know, like physical pain is, it's not just physical pain. It destroys you, especially the longer it goes on for. It will break you down in every possible way, physically, emotionally, mentally, you know, spiritually, and it did with me. And so I will get into things as I go along. Um, but yeah, that was the start of it all. And I think I had something in high school um, solidify that I was going to go through a really hard time. Um, with that particular story, I went to Avon Lake High School. Um, I was, I believe, a junior, or I'm not sure if I was a junior or a senior, but there was this kid named Jimmy Smith, and he was at that time, like, he'd sit in front of me in school, and I would talk to him, and he would talk to my boyfriend at the time, who I was in a band with. I sing and write music. He played guitar, so we would write stuff together at that time. And unfortunately, like, he was working on our hard drive. It was like broken. We couldn't get stuff off of it. And he would go work on these things in the garage. And I'm not going to get into details out of respect for him and the family, but unfortunately, there was an accident and he did pass away in the garage. And unfortunately, his younger brother found him. I had a really hard time with that one. I was like crying almost every night for 2 months after I found out. Like, the whole school found out. They announced it. And the craziest part too, I was in choir, and I remember him always wanting to hear me sing. And I was like, oh, well, I have a solo for this thing, and you'll hear me then. You'll hear me then. Well, he died before that. And I remember just crying a lot. And one night I went to sleep. And when I get visited by a spirit, I'll become very aware. It's like when you're awake here, but then suddenly you're awake there and you know everything. Like, you know that you're somewhere else. Sometimes I'll know like what time of the year, or like what it actually is in reality to like what's going on in the dream. Anyway, so I became very aware, and I was sitting in my kitchen at the time, well, the dining room of the kitchen. The chair, though, wasn't facing the table. It was like facing down the kitchen, down this hall to the doorway that led to a sunroom. And he walked by me. I just caught his hair, and I started crying so hard. This is the first dream I ever had with someone who passed over coming to me with a message. So I was around 16 at the time. I was one of the youngest ones in my class, so. But yes, I was, I think, like, yeah, 16. Had to be 16 or 17. And he walked by and walked in the sunroom and turned around and smiled at me. And no, that was toward the end. So when I first saw his hair, I realized it's him, and he is standing in front of me trying to tell me something. And so when you are afraid or stressed, you don't get the message clearly. It's like, like the radio when you're tuning it and you can't quite get it there. It's like that. It's like you have too many frequencies going on, mess going on, and you can't receive the message. So that being my first time, of course, I was like super emotional and I was cutting the message up. And it was a really simple message, which I understood later. But at that time, he was trying to tell me, and I didn't really know what he was saying. And then behind him, I see his mom. And he's showing me his mom talking on stage with a microphone to people. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like, okay. And he's like, will you, and then he even came back to me as a younger kid, and his like hands are on my knees, and he's like still asking me like, will you something. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand. I was so exhausted. I was trying so hard, like, to know what he was saying, but I just could not stop crying, and I was a mess. And I finally told him, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't understand. And then when I said that, he walks down towards the sunroom, turns around, and he wouldn't leave because, like, he would not leave me until I told him that I would be okay. And this is where I get even more scared. So in his eyes, every time I get these visits with people from the other side, they show such like peace, love, and happiness that does not even exist here. Like, the human body can barely handle 1 grain of what this is. And I see this, beaming from his eyes and his face. But I also see that he has like this sadness for me. And I see it, like he has this great deep sadness for me. And I got scared, and I didn't know, you know, is this like for one thing that happens, or is this like my whole life? Is this just like one thing after another? And I got really scared, but I didn't want him to worry about me. So I remember like him wanting me to give him like a sign that I'd be okay. And I just finally like smiled, even though I was like, had tears all over my face. And I just blew him a kiss. I like kissed my hand and blew him a kiss. And he smiled really big and blew one back and left. And I woke up. And I learned later, about 5 years later, I told my mom about this dream, and she's like, oh, you should tell his mom. You should tell his mom. I'm like, no. His family's going through enough. Like, she doesn't know me. I don't want to be like, stirring something or make it weird. But I told her what I saw in my dream. And I'm like, the more I think about it, he kept being like, will you? I really just think he was asking me, like, will you tell her I'm okay? And my mom really wanted me to tell her, and I was like, no. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, the universe, if she's really supposed to know, it'll work out in a way where she does. And I left it at that. And about 5 years later, or less, this was a while back, at least 3 years later, somewhere from 3 to 5, my mom calls me and she's like, you're never going to guess who was in front of me in line. And I'm like, what? And she goes, it was Jimmy Smith's mom. I'm like, it's so weird, She's like, I told her about your dream. I told her that he visited you and all this stuff. And I remember before this meeting too, of her running into her, she started doing public talks to people on awareness and prevention, like on behalf of her son. She started doing these talks in front of groups of people, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is why he was showing me her on the stage with the microphone talking. Like, that's what she was doing. So that solidified that even more for me. Anyway, so then my mom, fast forward, runs into her and tells her that I had this dream where he visited me, and tells her everything. And his mom was so happy to hear it. And she was like, oh, I would love to have coffee with her one day and all this stuff and talk about him and everything. And, I just thought, wow, the universe really did pull that together. And even though I wasn't the one directly telling her this message at the time, because it was the first time that happened to me and I didn't feel comfortable, I was still in this phase where I was keeping it to myself more. Like, people in high school didn't really know this about me at all. Like, just some of my friends and family members, but mostly my mom. And it just worked out where my mom was in the same place as her to give this message. And I'm sharing this one after my grandpa because of me having this, realizing that I had this, not only to help other people, but to really help myself through very, very, very difficult times. So obviously I was unaware that my life would start unfolding in these ways over time, you know, to be a really difficult one. Um, so I found that interesting. Also, what's interesting is for the last 4 years, so my whole life, I have this. And I mean, it really grew. So, like, I will share all the stories. I have anything and everything from angels, spirits who have no idea that they're even passed away, that are still stuck in that time, in houses and everything, whether they're connected to furniture or the house in general. That's why me growing up, like the amount of spirits my parents kept bringing in the house was insane, and it was a new build, but they kept getting these antiques and bringing them in, and I'm just like, oh my God, you have no idea, how much stuff you're bringing in. And this was like during the time when I was younger, and I didn't know how to protect myself, and I didn't know how to like cleanse anything. This was like before the internet. Like, I remember in high school, that was like the phone that would call to the internet, like, or like to the computer. So like, I didn't really know. It's not like you could just go and like find a book on this stuff. So yeah, the things I learned are far and wide and in between, and I dealt with things messing with me. I dealt with darker, mischievous spirits and demons, and I had the thing with the devil. That's another story. I've had things with God twice. I got to a point where through certain practices, things heightened so much where I was literally seeing energy, the whole geometric system that we're in of energetic lines connecting everything to everyone, from us to the sky to the trees. Like, I mean, it is this whole geometric thing. The lines I saw, they're like these blue lines. And that'll be another episode as well. But like, I was seeing how things were working, like the things that we do, how it affects this system. And I could look at people and I would see how energy was running through people where they were having physical pain or issues, or I could see the way it was going that was causing like relationship issues in those connections. I even would see auras around people. And it even got to a point, and this is so weird, but like I was like seeing energy going off of things and hearing these frequencies that we don't hear. Like I've never heard certain things like this. So it made me realize, like, we are one of a very physical world, and we were meant for more than this. Like, we're not supposed to be strangers. We are all here in this life on this planet together, and it doesn't have to be such a lonely place where we hide the truth and everyone's just acting like they're fine all the time, because that's not reality. What I've learned along the way is that the point in everything, if you look all around you and even in yourself, is to grow we're growing and changing. And as long as we keep evolving and changing for the better, that's good. And, you know, our idea of good and bad is very different on the other side. Time is too. You know, like time can feel long here. And, you know, 5 years here is like, I don't know, a day there. Like it's very different. We're not gone long from the other side. I lost my train of thought. Oh, right. With the other side, with good and bad, okay, you know, when bad things happen to you, and during it, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We don't know where the growth is going to be. It's, you know, later when we look back, you can see where things grew for you or what the pauses were out of this horrible thing. So if you go through something so difficult and horrible, but it pushes you to grow for the better or something good comes out of it, then that's overall, that's good. So that's kind of the difference. So you know, being vulnerable and sharing this, like, sure, it's scary, but I don't feel like what we experience in our lives are meant to not share. You know, we never know who it could help. So I am looking forward to sharing episodes. I'm really going to try to share one a week or two. We'll see how it goes, since this is all new for me. And thank you for, you know, taking the time to listen. And hopefully in this process, I'll meet a lot of people who have stories to share as well. And I hope this is a platform where I can provide information and things to help people that, you know, are going through things, whether it's things of the other side spiritually or with health stuff or whatever it is. This channel, like, I am really going to share everything because I think I have to in order for people to really understand. And I know for a fact all the stories I have to share will connect. I will connect on something with each and every one of you. I know it. So yeah, here's episode 1. And this is Fifth Perspective. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, like or subscribe, hopefully both. I'm looking forward to growing this family for this channel. And until next time.